It's Danny Flexen here for SecondsOut. Delighted to be joined by the CEO of Matchroom Boxing, Mr. Frank Smith. Frank, how you doing, mate?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. I'm in Japan, in Osaka, ready for Prizefighter. Feeling a bit tired, but ready to go.
I'm wondering when was the last time we did a Zoom interview with you when you were actually in the UK?
I don't know, mate. I don't know. I was looking earlier. I haven't spent enough time in the UK, but it's got keeping us busy. More and more happening.
What I was going to say is it got more kind of challenging for you over the last couple of years, all the travel and being away from the family and that kind of thing.
No, do you know what? It's been consistent probably for the last 5 years now since we launched in the US. Now, when we launched our US business, we were spending a lot of time in the, probably half the year in the US when we got that up and running, when we signed the DAZN deal. That was late 2018 when that kicked off. So it's been non-stop for the last few years, but it's exciting. We were talking about it earlier with the team we got here. It's fun to be able to travel as part of the job and get to see new places. And we landed in Tokyo last night, then flew across to Osaka today. So yeah, as hard work as it is, it's also a lot of fun and rewarding.
And you don't look knackered either, because it's a long flight and it's a big time difference.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Somehow I managed to just find my way around time zones and just sleep whenever I feel tired, get an hour here or there. So I'm sure I'll break down at some point quite soon.
Yeah, be rocking back and forth in a corner. Why Japan for this kind of revival of the prizefighter format?
I think, look, we've been, a big part of my job now is looking at new markets, new locations for us to take boxing to. Prizefighter has always been a brand and a concept that I feel could be replicated anywhere in the world. And something, people like the format of a tournament, in any sport, and something they can follow, and Prizefighter for us was a big part of our business that got us back into boxing 16 years ago. I think the year I started at Matchroom was the year Prizefighter started in 2008. And obviously that did amazing things for boxing then. As the market changed, we felt that it had sort of delivered what we needed from it, but we always felt there was something with the brand. So in a lot of the conversations we've had internationally, trying to bring new events to new markets, it's always been something I've tried to push hard. When we signed a 3-year deal with Rakuten and NSN in Japan to deliver 3 events a year. And, we review that each year, but the first year it was about putting together a tournament, and that's where Prizefighter came back in. Originally, obviously the Prizefighter tournament was 3 fights on one night, all to semis and finals over 3 rounds. This is championship rounds, 10 and 12 round fights, over three events over the next 9 months. So the semi-finals due to take place in October, finals looking to take place in February, all in Japan, different locations around Japan. So yeah, it's something that we've been pushing for a while, and I'm glad we got it up and running.
Talking of kind of international expansion, Riyadh season have their first US event in a few weeks' time. How involved have you guys been at Matchroom in that process?
Yeah, look, it's a tremendous event they're putting together. A number of promoters involved in bringing together some amazing talent, and just shows again that what a great job His Excellency, the Riyadh season team have done. Bringing boxing together to make great fights. But yeah, involved in a lot of the operational side of things, getting everything together. It's going to be a special event, just like September 21st is as well. A real special night. You've seen the way they deliver events, obviously in Riyadh, and this is going to follow suit as well on August 3rd and September 21st in London.
Now, September 21st, you've done my segue for me there. Joshua against Dubois at the head of a huge card. Some comments we kind of confronted Eddie with yesterday from Simon Jordan, his good friend, who suggested that the moment Anthony Joshua takes a big shot on the chin from Dubois, he's going to experience something akin to PTSD regarding the Andy Ruiz defeat. What did you make of those comments?
It's just that it's Simon Jordan being Simon Jordan. He has to say things to be divisive. It's his opinion. He's allowed an opinion on. I've never, everyone can have an opinion on fights, how they think a fight's going to go. I think it's quite a wild comment to say something like that. Heavyweight boxing is heavyweight boxing. It's why we love to watch it. Everyone I don't think there's a heavyweight around today that hasn't been hurt in a fight. And that's why people are intrigued by it. You got the biggest punchers in the world going in against each other. The reality is, if you get caught, you might get hurt, but it's about surviving and coming through that. But it's just Simon being Simon. I didn't hear the exact comments myself, so but it doesn't surprise me.
This led to something of a debate about AJ's chin, and it led to Eddie saying that he's got a better chin in his view than Tyson Fury. And a lot of people would then quickly point to Fury getting up off the deck against Wilder and taking the shots of some big punchers. What do you make of the kind of chin debate? Chingate, if you like.
Chingate. Look, I think, as I say, in heavyweight boxing, it's about, that's the reality of the sport. You get caught by a 16, 17, 18 stone man, you can get hurt. And look, I think AJ's fight against Andy Ruiz was the only fight he's been stopped in. You look at Tyson Fury when he fought Alexander Usyk as an example. He was a lot more vulnerable in that fight in terms of he looked in a lot more trouble fighting Alexander Usyk than AJ looked in either of the two fights against Alexander Usyk. So, but you can compare each fight. But the reality is, it's when two fighters get in there, you'll see what happens. But again, I go back to the point. I don't think there's a heavyweight boxer around today who hasn't been caught with a shot, buzzed, hurt, whatever you want to say. That's the reality of it, and you'd be quite amazing if you didn't take, like, Usyk's been in a position where he's been hurt. All of the top heavyweights have. And it's about the staying power. I think a lot of people will compare it to like that Andy Ruiz fight. But then you look at some of the punches AJ's taken over his career. I mean, look, the key is in the sport is not to take too many punches. And in AJ's last few fights, he's been the aggressor, and no one's got anywhere near him, really, if you look at those last 3 or 4 fights. But yeah, it's what makes heavyweight boxing intriguing, is that no one's safe.
Do you think AJ's a different fighter, different person mentally than he was in the Andy Ruiz fight all those years ago?
I think everyone progresses in life, learns over the time. That was 5 years ago now. That was, what was that, June 2019, that fight in New York. And, to think jumping straight back in there in the rematch against Andy Ruiz, coming off the back of that, the pressure he must have been under. I think, yeah, he would have learned a lot. I think, and he's grown a lot over the last few years. And you only have to look at him and his performances and say he's really in the form of his life. And I think a lot of it in life is confidence, in any walk of life, but especially in a boxing ring. And I think he believes in himself. He believes in the team around him. And I think everything's coming together. And I really think he's in the prime of his career. When you look back to the early part of his career, he was really didn't have enough fights, probably because he built himself up so quickly. World champion at 16-0, or I think it was 15 or 16-0 against Charles Martin. And then from there, he probably wasn't active enough because he was collecting the belts. And what happens with then when it's bigger fights, you're fighting once every 6-7 months. And I think, the momentum has been key for him, and the activity has been key for him. But yeah, I think he's in the best place, and I definitely think you're going to see some of the best wins coming from Anthony Joshua over the next 18 months.
Now, I know how much you love a Chris Eubank Jr. question. How close was he to signing for Matchroom?
Oh, look, I've been in discussions with them for a while, his team. And we had discussions up until, I think it was Saturday, the weekend just gone. Look, for us, a key focus is obviously the Conor Ben fight. It's the biggest fight out there. There's a bit of uncertainty around when the date of that is, and when that can happen. But I believe that's the biggest fight out there. I believe that's the fight that, that's the fight that Chris wants, is the Conor Ben fight. It was more a case of us being able to deliver what he, the kind of fights he wanted before that fight. I'm not saying he doesn't want to fight Conor Ben, but it's just, when is the date of that? And then, I think they're looking at a couple of fights, and, we can, amongst the schedule, fit 2 fights in. We could do one and then the Conor Ben fight early part of next year. I think they were looking for something different. So let's see. But I think he's in a position and able to do the Conor Ben fight away from that deal. I don't think it's. I think if you read it, it says partnership. I'm not sure it's a promotional deal.
Sure.
So I don't know that you have to ask them the structure of it. But yeah, there was discussions up until Saturday. Like I say, my focus has always been, and I've been open about this, is making that fight. I think it's the biggest fight out there. And hopefully we'll still see it.
How much of a coup do you think this partnership is for Boxxer?
I don't know. Only they'll be able to tell you. It depends what fights he's in. It depends what fights he's in. He in the stage of his career, he needs to be in the biggest possible fight. So it depends what route they choose to go down. But yeah, I'm sure interesting times for them. But the structure of it, again, it'll be interesting to understand what the structure of the deal is exactly.
Now, on September 21st, the card you alluded to earlier, we're seeing some Boxxer talent involved in Joshua Buatsi, Tyler Denny. It had been predominantly Matchroom and Queensbury in the UK involved in the Riyadh season events before that. We spoke to Johnny Nelson yesterday, and he said that Frank and Eddie are just puppets, not you, Frank Warren. You might think you're a puppet as well, but we didn't cover that. He said they're both puppets, and it's really Turki Al Sheikh driving things, and they've tried to squeeze Ben Shalom and Boxxer out, but not been able to. What's your response to that?
I don't believe so. I think everyone's always been quite clear and open in any interview. Turki Al Sheikh, His Excellency, he picks what he wants on the shows. We've seen tremendous events. This is the first event in London, in the UK, obviously. But when you look at the Saudi shows over the years, there's been fighters from all different promoters. So it's not driven by, I don't think to say it's driven by anyone pushing anyone out, is because a lot of people want to work together. When you look at the list of promoters that work together on other shows, it's not just forget Boxxer for 1 minute. There's probably been 15 promoters involved, I guess, over the time, and a lot of promoters who haven't historically got on with each other. So it's not about an individual being pushed out, I wouldn't say, if that makes sense. And the fact of the cards are built by His Excellency makes the decisions, obviously. And I think Eddie and Frank have always been quite open about that. I think Eddie, Frank, George, Spencer from Gold Star, all work very closely together as well, to help deliver things. But yeah, it's definitely driven by what His Excellency wants to see. And it's been great for boxing. But yeah, it's not about pushing anyone out, I'd say. Sometimes people have to look at themselves as to why things haven't been done, not blame other people, if that makes sense.
With that in mind, and given the history of the purse bid withdrawals, which I assume is what you're alluding to there, the two fights involving Boxxer talent are against Queensbury fighters, notably not Matchroom. What's the relationship like currently between Matchroom and Boxxer?
No, no change. If we can make fights that make sense, then fine. But it's, I've always been quite open. My view hasn't really changed, but if we can make fights that make sense, happy days. But we're always going to be competitors. I don't necessarily agree with the business practices or the morality of certain things, but it's not going to get in the way of if we can do what's right for our fighters and deliver, then happy days. But we've got obviously Josh Warrington, he's fighting Anthony Kakachi, so a Matchroom v Queensbury fight. Then you've got Josh Kelly, who's with Wasserman, fighting Liam Smith, who's essentially a free agent. So it's all different fighters. It's about making good fights that make sense. I think if we had a light heavyweight that could fight Joshua Buatsi, for example, or an ordered fight, then you might have seen that on there. If we had Felix Cash probably would have been fighting Hamza Shiraz if he would have beat Tyler Denny. So it's not really about, the promoters and saying, oh, we want this promoter to have this fight. It's more about making fights that make the most sense.
Fair enough. Now, a fighter who could make a lot of sense for Matchroom is, of course, Shakur Stevenson. Eddie Hearn's been quite open about the fact he'd like to bring him in. I know he's going to be at the fight this weekend between Boots and Avanesian. It was reported that Shakur turned down an offer from Top Rank to stay for $15 million over 5 fights, so $3 million a fight. Was he right to turn that offer down, in your view?
It depends again, it goes back to the point about understanding the structure of the deal. If it's $15 million and that includes mega fights, different story. You know, Shakur could be in a position in the right fight to make a bucket load of money, you know, but it depends on the structure. So I can't really, if it was $15 million, but at the same time, other fights that's been negotiated outside, which I think maybe it would have been, yeah, that sounds like a good deal to me. But again, none of us really know the detail of it. Only he'll be able to decide. And, you know, he'll believe he's got a lot of value as well. And in certain fights, in probably 2 or 3 fights, there's a lot of money to be made there. So, you know, it will come down to what the structure of it was.
And he's had a lot of criticism for having a style that's not always particularly exciting. But the flip side of that is it was revealed that he had the top rated boxing of the year so far on ESPN. And that's without ESPN Plus figures being taken into account. How do we kind of square that circle? Why is he apparently a draw despite maybe not having that style?
Good question. Good question. You know, he's. I always think that. But I always thought that about Floyd. People will question this. Floyd Mayweather, for me, was like but then he had the flashy side, but he didn't quite tally up. Or in my head, I'm not like as I've said before, I'm not like a crazy boxing fan who watches and looks for the boxing ability. You know, I'm like probably more like your casual boxing fan who wants to see knockouts. You know, that's what people tune in for. That's the reality of it. But he's obviously got a big following. He's built a big following for himself. You know, he's got a huge social footprint as well, Shakur. And I think people are interested in seeing what happens. I think sometimes for certain people, the style could turn them off, you know, but there's other people who are interested by that. And there's other people that are bought into the personality as well.
Great stuff. Frank, I'm going to let you get back to it in Japan. Hope it all goes well at the show and really appreciate you joining us.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.